Disclaimer: the views expressed on this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek are solely the opinions of the host and the guest. The content of the conversation is not reflective of the institutions or establishments mentioned therein. Take all these opinions with a pinch of salt and a dash of lime if needed. Namaskara, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're watching or listening, and welcome to this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. My guest this week is Phuong Anh. Phuong Anh and I met through the University of Central Oklahoma, actually while we were competing together in the International Student Pageant back in 2018. We've now known each other for close to 3 years, but I haven't had a full-blown conversation for a while, which today you're getting to see through this episode. In this episode, we spoke about a wide range of topics, starting from her time in Oklahoma to the growth that she experienced as a human being, to some of her experiences of living in the Netherlands, to some of her leanings towards the concept of spirituality, and much more. So there's definitely a ton to relate to and a ton to learn about different perspectives. So be a sponge and absorb everything that's coming your way today. And without further ado, I present to you Phuong Anh on this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. Hey Anh, how's it going?
Hello, Prateek. Nice to meet you again here. It's been pretty good for me.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's been a while since we've had a full blown conversation with each other, so it's nice to get to see you again. So yeah, before we get started, let the people know who you are, what some of your likes are, some of your dislikes, some of your interests, some of your future aspirations, if you're willing to share. Yeah, the whole spiel.
Okay, so my name is Phuong Anh. I'm from Vietnam, and I met Prateek when I joined a beauty pageant in UCO, University of Central Oklahoma. Um, and after that, I moved to the Netherlands for 1 year, and then now I came back to Vietnam already. And I'm currently working as an English teacher, researcher, anything just like freelance stuff. My aspiration right now, I'm really into spiritual things, um, and also arts. I'm trying to explore many kinds of arts like painting, singing, and also I've taken up yoga lately, so I have a lot on my plate.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. There's a lot to unpack over there. So, to sort of introduce you said that you studied at UCO and then you moved to the Netherlands for a year. So, in your time in the Netherlands and UCO, what were you studying?
When I was at UCO, I majored in English education, so English language, literature, and education.
And was it the same even in Netherlands as well?
No, I kind of switched it a little bit when I came to the Netherlands. I chose arts and culture. So it
Mm-hmm.
was still in the social science sector, humanities sector, but it's kind of broader. Yeah.
Hmm. Was it different for you in any way switching from English to arts, or was it a
Yes,
smooth
of
transition?
course. Because like I didn't have the undergraduate background, the
Hmm.
basic background in arts and culture. So during my first sections of the master courses, I got lost in the lectures, and I couldn't really get in touch with my friends and my professors. And my professors were really doubtful of my capabilities because like they didn't see me participate in the discussion as much. So I kind of struggle out there. Yeah.
Hmm. Gotcha. So how did you find your footing after that? Like, was it just you sort of having to do the extra work of researching outside and all that sort of stuff?
So at first, I kind of recoil, like I try to avoid confrontation in class discussion. But then I figure out it wouldn't be a way for me to fully make use of my time in the Netherlands. So I try to approach my professors and talk to them about my problems, telling them, oh, maybe I need some help. Could you recommend some reading lists for me to catch up? And then I just try to do my best at the assignments, and luckily I did pretty well in the assignment, so it was a really bad outcome.
Gotcha. You mentioned something interesting there where initially you tried to avoid confrontation, but then later you decided to speak to your professors and seek help. Was it just a sense of nervousness of not knowing how to go about confronting them that sort of stopped you from confrontation? Or what was it specifically?
I don't quite understand the question.
So, in the sense that you said you didn't confront, like you didn't take part in group discussions and things like that, but then you ended up speaking to your professors a few sometime later. What helped you switch?
Mm, I think I have been doing that all my life because I'm quite introverted and
Hmm.
I don't like to speak out in front of a group of people. But a one-to-one conversation is completely fine for me. So mm, I think that's just what happened. I figure out that talking personally to the professor is easier than um, putting myself into hot water in front of the class.
Hmm.
And
No,
I
that's fair.
just want to make the days at the Netherlands count for me. You know?
Hmm. Why did you feel like you needed to make them count?
Because I only have 1 year. And then after
Hmm.
that, obviously, I have to come back to Vietnam if I don't have a job. And obviously, I came back because of the COVID-19 as well.
Hmm. Gotcha. Okay. So, what was the culture shift like for you from moving from Vietnam to Oklahoma, Oklahoma to Netherlands, and back to Vietnam? If you want to speak about those individually, like those switches, like you can,
Um,
but was there anything that sort of helped you get through those differences in cultures, or how was the experience in general?
that was a really long story to get through. But when I
You can go
was
for it. Go for it.
yeah, okay, I'll try my best. When I was 18 years old, I first left Vietnam to Oklahoma City. And
Hmm.
just during my 18 years before that, I was kind of a mama girl. I was
Hmm.
closed off from anything that I consider a risk or my mom considered a risk for me. So that was not to say that I stay in my house most of the time, not like that, but I didn't really venture out there.
Hmm.
And when I went to Oklahoma City, I have to fend for myself.
Hmm.
Everything. I have to take care of everything. I learned how to cook, do the household chores, um, and the first year was extremely difficult for me because Oklahoma is so isolated and it's kind of boring to be honest. I didn't have much chance to have fun out there, and
Hmm.
um, in the first year, I keep calling my mom over the phone and cry to her, and also to my friends and my teachers, saying to them that maybe this is one of the biggest regrets in my life. Um,
Hmm.
and also because my mom, I think she's quite an insecure person. She's afraid of everything, so she warned me beforehand that America is so scary. People will attack you, people will fool you. So you have to be suspicious and cautious of everyone. Okay. So I try to wear like an armor around me, so to shield people away from me. Even with my roommates, I try to avoid them. So when
Hmm.
my roommate's friend come over, they know me, so they wanted to say hi, and my room was closed. So I just open the door and I say hi to them, and then I close the door immediately right back. Just one thing because I don't feel comfortable. And second is because I'm quite introverted, so I didn't know how to make social contacts right then. Um, yeah, so then as I get more, as I got more Vietnamese friends and also international friends, I feel like maybe I'm slowly beginning to feel belong here. And but after all, after 4 years of staying in Oklahoma City, I feel like it's time for me to explore something new, something that I didn't have a chance to do because I was stuck in Oklahoma. So I've been loving to travel to Europe since I was in high school. So I think, okay, now it's time for me to make that dream come true, to realize that dream.
Hmm.
So I tried to apply to several schools, and actually, I mostly applied to American schools because it was my safe place, my comfort zone, you know. But I failed most of them, and I was admitted to the Netherlands, which is a really good fortune for me. So yeah, um, I between the transition between America and the Netherlands, there was a short 3 months where I came back to Vietnam for the summer vacation, and that was when I had a major clash with my mother because I've been away for too long. It seemed like I certainly became a stranger to her, and she developed in a way that was also unfamiliar to me. So we had a fight, two major fights, and that fall into when we were traveling together um, for a vacation. And I think that makes the fights make me realize something, um, some holes about our relationship, something that I missed out on when I was too
Hmm.
busy focusing on my study and my dream and my friends. Yeah. So after that, I moved to the Netherlands. I didn't have that mentality of being insecure or being wary anymore. Instead, it was kind of exploring to my fullest everything. So I love the Netherlands so much. And also because I know that I only have 1 year versus just the 4 years in Oklahoma. I just appreciate every moment. But then I had a really annoying roommate. She and yeah, and so she kind of left some bad taste in my mouth until this day. Other than that, I have nothing against my moving to the Netherlands. But then the COVID-19 hit us in March 2020. I mean, hit the Netherlands in 2020. And
Hmm.
I had to stay there alone from March until July when I left the Netherlands because my roommate left early. So, um, yeah, during that time, I had to finish my master thesis, and I was locked up in my room with nothing
Hmm.
else to do. And with the pandemic approaching the country, so my family was extremely worried of me, and I was kind of panicked here and there as well, with like a constant state, but it will sporadically pop up in my dream.
Hmm.
But I think I was, well, looking back on it, I think I was really strong to get over it by myself. Of course, with the help from my family and my friends, because they lend me a listening ear when I need them the most. So now that I came back to Vietnam, I think that it felt like a dream. The 5 years away from home is just like a dream. And I would like to experience that again if I given that.
Hmm. Gotcha. So, you sort of explained your sort of evolution in terms of being closed off to opening up to being open to exploring and a lot of other things there. So just to sort of hit on that a little more, which I mean, I guess this might be hard for you to answer. I don't know, but which part of the world did you feel like you grew the most? Was it in Netherlands or was it in Oklahoma?
Where I like the most, or
Where you grew the most, like you felt like you
oh,
grew a lot as a person.
okay, definitely America, because
Hmm.
the 4 years of undergraduate study was the most crucial time of a person's life, of a
Hmm.
adolescent's life. I had my major transformation there from the first year of being shy and introverted and insecure person into more
Hmm.
confident, more capable. Yeah, that was the reason why I tried to participate in the beauty pageant. So I wouldn't imagine in my first year that I will take part in something like that in front of a huge crowd. Yeah. So that kind of prepared me well for my journey in the Netherlands.
Hmm. Gotcha. So, why do you think it is important for us as people to open up?
I think when you open up, you can allow other people to get to know you, and also you
Hmm.
allow yourself to know other people. Like there's no barrier between you and that other person or the outer world. Um, but I don't know. I just regret a lot of the times when I didn't open up. So if I can have one word to the students, the international students who are traveling to a different country to study, I would say that just try to be more open
Hmm.
so that you won't miss out on some opportunities, like relationship opportunities, or even work and study opportunities like I did.
Hmm. Hmm. Gotcha. Do you think that, I mean, you said you used the word regret, so I wanted to ask, do you feel like that regret will last with you for a while, or do you think you can sort of let go of that regret eventually?
I think it won't last long. I think I'm starting to um, drift away from that huge regret, and instead it's just like a lesson that I have to reflect on, even
Hmm.
though time passes.
Hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, no, totally. Because I think at the moment, or in that moment rather, there's a lot of times where we might feel like a certain sense of regret towards things. But yeah, I think, like you said, like looking at it as a lesson can definitely go a long way in understanding that it's just part of the learning curve. Like maybe in some sense, you had to go through that curve of being closed off to sort of see the benefits of being open and becoming an open person. So you mentioned the pageant and you mentioned a few other experiences. If you were to sort of boil it down to a few lessons that you learned from those experiences, what would those lessons be?
Um, I think the thing I learned the most from those experiences were that just take things, just don't take things seriously and just like enjoy the moment. Because I was too serious in
Mm,
my way, so it's quite difficult to say to express it in words. Let me say it one more time. I think the first lesson is to be confident of
mm,
myself. Um, and secondly is to enjoy the moment, like, even though I'm confident. Um,
mm,
and I know that I may win the pageant or something, but
mm,
the most important thing is I have to enjoy it, enjoy the
mm,
friends, enjoy the opportunity to express myself. Yeah, it's more important than winning because I didn't win, but um, I was granted something more than that.
mm. True, true, true. Um, there's a lot of questions that are sort of popping up in my head, but I was gonna ask. You said it's good for us to not be, or like, it's best if we don't take things too seriously. Do you think, and share whatever you're comfortable sharing? You don't need to go too deep if you don't want to. But do you feel like your upbringing had a role in terms of, or your sort of personal outlook of life when you were younger had a role to play in you taking things seriously? The reason I asked that is because I was the same way too. I took a lot of things very seriously as a kid, even in high school. But then after moving here and like latter stages of high school, I sort of let go of that feeling and started to take things less seriously. So yeah, what led to you being serious as a person?
What made me serious as a person?
Yeah, in the sense that, like you said, right, you had to understand, or you learned that you shouldn't take things too seriously. Why did you take things seriously? Like, was it part of your upbringing?
Yeah, I think that stemmed from the fact that I try to seek validation and affirmation from other people. Um,
Hmm.
like I said, I spent my life being insecure and unconfident of my abilities. So everything that I do, I have to see if other people approve it, if I am pleasing them in the right way. And so if I don't get it right, I will be realistic to myself. So I think that was what made me serious the most. Uh, really critical of myself.
Hmm. Yeah, no, because I think that feeling of wanting to like be accepted by everybody, like, do you think that that feeling of wanting to be validated and accepted by others sort of made you feel like you always had to be right with everything that you did?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So like um, when I entered the beauty pageant, I I had this mindset of I have to win something to prove that I'm worthwhile, that I'm capable. And
Hmm.
when I didn't win anything, it was well at that moment, it was shocking to me. It was like the world collapsing before my eyes because it's another evidence that okay, I'm not good enough to stand on the stage and compete. But then, um, my friends just comfort me, and then they say that everything I did was amazing, and they will approve of me, no matter what I put on a stage. So I feel like maybe that's just an illusion that I have in my mind, and it's not everyone's um, real assumption of me.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's very true because we want to feel like we're a part of a group of people. I think like we don't want to feel left out, and that also like tends to play a role in terms of feeling the need to be accepted. Um, so like the pageant and your other experiences in college basically helped you get out of that.
I
Hmm.
think there is one professor that also helped me along the way. She was my mentor professor in Brazil. I met her in my sophomore year in my world literature class, and she just kind of guided me through the academic stuff, like how to present, how to make yourself, how to put yourself out there in the national and regional conferences, how to build towards your career, how to apply for a master. And she just at the time she was like a lifesaver to me because
Hmm.
she became my role model. So I was like, okay. She recognized the good of me, and she helped to do away with my. She helped me improve from my mistake and my like my insufficiency. So maybe this is the person I want to become. This is the person who will help me get there. So yeah, I keep bringing it onto her.
Hmm. Do you feel like we need people to sort of help us realize that, or do you think that we can realize that ourselves?
I think it depends on the characteristic of the situation. Well,
Hmm.
sometimes you need both, um, or you may be you. It's probable that you only need a person to nudge you in the right direction in the beginning, but then as you move forward towards your goal or the person you want to become, you have to be the person to drive yourself. That's the most sustainable way to move forward.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because I think there's moments where, like you said, like it depends. Because there's some moments that you will realize based off of the things that you observe, but then there's other moments where somebody has to hold a mirror in front of you and tell you, look, this is what it is. Like, look at this. You're actually doing something right. So just follow that path. Um, so based off of what you said, like you just said, that your mentor professor helped you a lot, sort of grow out of that sense of seeking validation. Um, why do you think, maybe we answered this question already earlier, but why do you think that we want to seek um, validation in a lot of ways? Like if we want to dig into that a little deeper, because I know we sort of mentioned that, yeah, you sort of want to fit in, but like as people we want to fit in, but if we were to dig a little deeper, why do you think that we as people try to seek validation?
Let me think. Well, I think just boils down to self love. And you hear the phrase self love over and over again these days. But basically, it's just about understanding yourself and just trust yourself no matter what. I think if you trust that you are able to do something, then you don't really need help or need approval from other people.
Hmm. So, like, a sense of self trust is very important in terms of being able to get out of that.
Yeah.
True, very true. Because I think we can be very doubtful about our own abilities. And yeah, trusting ourselves can definitely go a long way in not wanting to seek that validation. Before we or not before we started, but during the introduction, you mentioned that you're now sort of into spirituality and seeking those like sort of lessons and concepts as well. In your sort of research or like practices, if you will, um, have these sort of lessons popped up even more, or have they sort of helped you understand these things even more deeply?
Doing my spiritual work.
Yeah, like through your spiritual work, do you think some of these lessons that you learned here, did you get like a deeper sense of understanding for them?
Absolutely. It's like people have this term shadow work. So throughout, I think it has been 1 year. Uh, 1 year since I've been recognizing that I have some shadow work to do, which is
Hmm.
realizing the problems of yourself and then confront it and try to solve it by yourself, by your own um, willpower. Um, and during that 1 year, I just keep running through my memory and digging
Hmm.
out some of the insecurities that I have, some moments, some regrets that I have in the past. And I just try to pinpoint the problem there. I try to figure out the motive, why I was acting like that. And in the end, I try to um, find a solution as to how I can mentally bring myself out of there. So I think spirituality is not like superstitious. it's not superstition, but it's like getting to know the soul, your mind better, or focusing on the mental aspect of things.
You were talking about spirituality and like how we might think that it's superstition, or like why do you think that is? Like, why do people perceive it to be superstitious?
Okay, so first it involves some really weird terms like the thing I just said, shadow work, and then enlightenment, and then awakening. So people are not used to those intangible things. So they think, okay, you are talking about nonsensical stuff. And the second thing is it involves some it involves some work with the spiritual sphere, like not physical stuff. Like if you want to get more money, you have to work. That's on a physical level. But here, if you want to get yourself out of relationship trouble, you have to work on yourself first, solving problems. That is intangible. So
Hmm.
it's like people will think like you don't have to do anything to get it done. It's like a magical power. So yeah, it's hard to explain, but um, I think in Vietnam people will mostly consider it a superstitious act. Even my friends are quite skeptical talking about it.
Hmm. Interesting. You said like because a lot of it is very intangible. People tend to look at it from a perspective of it being superstitious, or like there being some sense of voodoo associated with it. Is that mainly because we like to associate growth or understanding or learning through something that's tangible or through something that's physical?
I think we are used to judging the growth of the other people based on the physical possessions, like
Hmm.
the job, the salary, their um, physical properties, like houses, real estate, and also the physical people around them, like their families, their partner, their spouses. So when we look at a person's spiritual mental growth, it's hard to see, it's hard to judge if that person doesn't speak about it or if we don't get to know them on a deeper level. So
Hmm.
I think that's why we are quite unfamiliar with the concept of spiritual mental.
Do you think that well, okay, let me before I say that, let me preface this by saying maybe I might be in a bit of an echo chamber of my own, but I do think that people are becoming more aware of these concepts like spirituality or meditation and yoga and etc. etc. So, do you think that we might eventually reach a phase where the skepticism will go away?
I think it will be a very slow movement for
Hmm.
every person to be accepting, for everyone to fully accept what it is. But I think at this rate, it is already acceptable. It is going in the right direction. So I don't really think that there is anything that we can fix that.
Hmm.
But yeah, but I think that in some religions, people are taking something to the extremes. Like for example, they kind of support the philosophy of religions. So like for example, the rituals that I just mentioned before, some people will make offerings to the deities for the sake of their own benefits. Like for example, I will offer you money and food and other physical stuff, like even gold, and in return you must give me even more wealth and more health and prosperity, abundance, anything. But with they only make offerings without doing the work themselves, and that is kind of the wrong way to approach religion.
Hmm. That's an interesting point you make, because I think the other, like, if somebody was to argue against that, not that I am, but like just to sort of look at it from a different perspective, I think some people might look at it as a way of giving, or giving back to these deities. Um, so do you think that, again, it goes back to that intention? Like, are you doing it for the sake of seeking more wealth, or are you doing it because you want to give
Yeah,
back?
yeah. I think it all comes to intention, the starting point.
Hmm.
Um, I totally agree if you say that we make offerings just to give it back to the community or to express your respect for the deities. That's completely fine, and that's everything that I want the people to recognize. But there are some people who took it the other way that is not really appropriate.
Hmm. And again, do you think that goes back to that sense of seeking something tangible, seeking something that is
Yeah,
materialistic?
yeah.
Yeah.
So they'll try
Because I
to.
think, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying that's a way of trying to tie the spiritual sphere with the physical sphere.
Mm,
They try to make sense of the spiritual world by translating it to the physical belongings and the physical
mm,
desires.
mm. Do you think that we can ever get away from? Do you think we can ever get away from sort of performing any spiritual practices through materialistic ways?
Well, it's hard for me to say because I'm not at a state where I can make that happen.
Mm,
So, and I don't really know if there is any effort on transforming that inappropriate religious practice. But I think it has to them, come from inside the people themselves. They have to realize that what they are doing is for the sake of themselves, for the sake of materialistic desires, rather than for their spiritual and their growth in life. Because I told you before, if there must be some person, some people to nudge us in the right direction, but then we have to be the person to drive ourselves to take the right action.
mm. Very true. Very true. Yeah, because as much as someone can nudge you in the right direction, after all, it's a single player game. Like, everything is happening within between your ears, so you have to be the person that makes the final decision. So I totally agree with you that it really matters in terms of you being the final person who makes that decision and doing it with the right intention. um if you were to sort of, I mean, and I think you probably answered this when we talked about it, but if you want to sort of truncate it as much as possible, what would be some of your learnings from your practice of spirituality so far?
Right. So for I've been only in this path for like 1 year. Before that, I was only religious, but now I would say
Hmm.
that I'm more spiritual than religious. I would say that first you have to be religious. It's not to
Hmm.
say that you have to be. Everyone has to be 100% religious in order to pursue this spiritual path. But it's just that why being religious helped me a lot. Um, because I feel like being religious means you submit yourself to a higher God, a higher sense of beings. So it means you can
Hmm.
possess some qualities like being humble, being accepting, and like giving back to the community. Like those are the guidelines in the religion. And then from these qualities, you can work your way towards spiritual paths. And I think there, I don't think that we can force the spiritual awakening to happen in everybody, because there will come a moment in your life when you suddenly realize that there is some work that I need to do right there. Yeah, it's really amazing how the world let you know and let you discover what your problem is. And it will come with it will come with a chance by random, not at your choosing, not at your chosen time or place. And I think if you are interested, you can read about spiritual practices in books, in YouTube videos. Just like just watch a short bit of it to see if you are if it is within your realm, if you can come to accept it a little bit more. And that's already a good first step.
Hmm. Definitely, definitely. You said something interesting over there again about how knowing that there's a higher being can help us be humble. So, and this is not to sort of attack any people who are not believers in religion or not believers in the fact that there is a God or whatever. But do you think that it's important for us to understand that there is a difference between um, us being the center of our world versus us being a center of the world? Does that make sense?
Yeah, um, I think the first thing is that you realize that your benefit is not the center of everything.
Mm,
So by thinking that you are just part of a bigger world, you'll be able to give easily. And by knowing that you belong to a community, a spiritual community, you will be able to know that you are working towards the mutual benefits. Um, Secondly, I think you can, well, by knowing that there is, well, using your phrase, knowing that you are not the center of yourself, you are part of a bigger world means that, well, this is a really hard question. Well, I was thinking that maybe you can reflect yourself on other people,
mm,
and knowing that you are not alone, and knowing that maybe your lessons, the experience
mm,
that you are going through, may be part of everyone else's. So you won't feel alone in that situation. For example, when I felt isolated and alone in America or in the Netherlands, I feel that this is just a small experience, a small suffering,
mm,
considering the countless other sufferings of other people. But they may be suffering from the same thing as me, or maybe worse thing. So I try that that allows me to be more considerate and
mm,
more appreciative of my current life.
mm, mm. Very true. Very true. I think it definitely helps to have a sense of community to help you understand or to help us understand the concept of spirituality or the concept of sort of just seeking growth in some way. Because we're all, even though we're all on our individual paths, there's definitely like a lot of overlap in terms of the things that we want in life, and what we want out of this life and so on. But you said something again. Maybe I'm just reading too much into this, but you said something about you wanting to grow and be happy in your current life. Do you believe in like afterlife, or do you believe in rebirth, or any of those schools of thought?
Well, as a Buddhist religious person, I do believe in
Mm-hmm.
the afterlife, past life and
Hmm.
the afterlife. And as I said, now that I've kind of moved a little bit away from just being religious, I still believe in reincarnation. So I think the gist of it is to believe that there is karma.
Hmm.
Um, like everything you give out will come back to you, even positive or negative. So even though you don't believe in afterlife, you should still believe in karma because karma is everything that motivates and drives this world, even in the afterlife. I think so.
Hmm.
Afterlife is like a embodiment of karma.
Hmm. That's a very fascinating point, because yeah, in karma, like you said, karma is like basically understanding that what you give is what you get. And that's a concept that, even if you don't necessarily use the word karma, it's a concept that we all know as people, because we've been told since we're children, or like, we hear these thoughts in school being like, you reap what you sow, or give what you want, give to the world what you want from it, and all that sort of stuff. So no, it definitely, there's multiple different ways of looking at it, be it karma or be it reaping what you sow. Um, so yeah, that definitely sort of helps answer that understanding. But again, I don't know how aware you are of the concept of afterlife, but if you are, can you sort of expand on that from the perspective of Buddhism?
Okay, so it basically means when you die, when you leave your physical body, your soul will enter a different life, next life, with
Hmm.
a different physical body, but the soul is basically still one, still the
Hmm.
same one as before, but it will have new memory, a new uh, brain, a new consciousness. But
Hmm.
everything in the afterlife will be influenced by your decision and your actions in the previous life. That's the
Hmm.
way of how karma works. And in Buddhism, it's just like the afterlife is the opportunity and the platform where you can pay off your karma, the past karma. For example, in this life, I owe you like 1 million US dollars, and I didn't pay you back. Then somehow in the next life, I have to work my way up to pay that debt to you in one way or another. It may be not 1 million US dollars anymore, but it may be in a sense that I have to work for you my whole life, for example.
Hmm.
Yeah. And in Buddhism, there is this thing called nirvana. So it's like the
Hmm.
heaven in Western ideologies. But nirvana is like a place. It's not as a place where you can indulge yourself in a lot of entertainment or relaxation. It's just a sense of being away from secular or earthly ties and disappearing
Hmm.
into the universe,
Hmm.
into nothingness. So the goal of Buddhism is to get there. And one way to get there is that you have to work your karma off. And one way to work your karma off is to reincarnate. Because
Hmm.
uh, the amount of karma in one's life is so huge that it takes several lives to get it off. And
Hmm.
if you do it right, then your afterlife will be in a better state than your previous life. Because,
Hmm.
for example, if in this life a person is um, is needy, is in an impoverished situation, and they don't have the chance to maybe participate in religious work. For example, doing charities or making offerings to the deities. But they are living with a good heart. They are uh, doing all the good stuff on their own. That in the next life they will have a chance to work their trauma off faster. For example, they can participate in more religious work. They can meet up with people of higher frequency, like people with
Mm-hmm.
higher religious and spiritual assets that can foster them in their own path. So yeah, that's how you should advance in the Buddhism, this philosophy.
Hmm. Yeah, you saying that sort of reminds me of a lot of the principles that are also sort of associated with Hinduism in a certain way. I mean, for those of you who don't know, like both are sort of um, have sort of originated from India, and maybe there are a lot of similarities in the sense of like the schools of thought, but there are a few differences too, of course. But from what I've understood, like from reading the Bhagavad Gita so far, I still have a little bit of it to finish, but it talks about a similar thing where you sort of carry your past deeds into your future life as well. And depending on the deeds that you did, you're sort of the quality of your next life can be dependent on your past in a lot of ways. And, working it off and sort of evolving as a soul to become a good soul, or like a good, I guess to put it simply, like being a good person through and through can help elevate your soul um, to, and you said nirvana, or in this case, it's believed like higher planets and like higher spiritual planets that get you close to God. So yeah, that's fascinating how we don't necessarily, excuse me, we don't necessarily think deeply about the things that we might do, like the small things that we might do on a day-to-day basis. But if we were to sort of zoom out and sort of look at it, um, even the smallest of things that I do tomorrow can have a huge implication of the life I lead, like in my next life. So does that thought ever sort of bog you down in a way, or do you look at it from a positive perspective of being like, okay, this means that I need to be a good person and do good as much as possible? Because we all make mistakes, we all do, and that's bound to happen. But do you feel like knowing that can maybe sometimes pull you down or make you afraid of making mistakes?
Yeah. Well, first comment is that I really agree with what you are saying about Bhagavad. Did I say it right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember studying it in my world literature class, but I don't really remember all of it. Because Hinduism is the origin of Buddhism, so I think there's a mutual connection in their reincarnation belief system. And secondly, about whether that would ties me down, I think yes, because a lot of the time I regret doing something bad to some other people. Well, it's not maybe explicitly bad, but it does convey a negative meaning. For example, that roommate that I have in the Netherlands, I didn't harm her in any ways, but there are some times when I have some negative thoughts like, oh my god, what if please don't let her stay with me or anything. So I really regret those thoughts afterwards because I feel like um, I am not at a position where where I can decide a person's life or a person's action, and I feel really bad if something happened to her. But then again, those moments, those negative moments will reminds me that I'm not a perfect human. I still have some problems to work with, and that becomes like a motivation for me to even work my positive side even better. So
Hmm.
I will realize that okay, I have a problem with roommates and friends and um, relationships. Well, maybe I have to see if I have other problems with myself. Is that a thing of that person, or is that just me? And then I will try to make up for that by being nicer to everyone else around me, as nice as possible, to work out that
Hmm.
problem. It is
Hmm.
sometimes it's quite stressful, but I think in the end, overall, it will drive me to a better direction. It's better
Hmm.
than just knowing that you are doing bad things to people and then do nothing about it.
Hmm. Hmm. True, because I also think like if you were to sort of zoom out and look at it, we can be very subjective about what is good and what is bad, because what is good for me might be bad for somebody else. So I feel like that also sort of can be a differentiating factor in how, excuse me, in how we might perceive things. But no, I definitely agree. I totally agree with you in the sense that those negative thoughts, while they do arise, um, having a positive, like at least putting in the effort to sort of have a positive outlook and do better can go a long way. Because if you were to sit with those negative thoughts, um, well, by sitting with them, I guess I mean to say that by sort of being in the same zone, if you're sitting with those negative thoughts to sort of associate and understand why you're getting those thoughts, I think that is a good thing, like to sort of understand where, like why those thoughts are coming up. But uh, if a person is sort of tying themselves down to always looking at that person from that perspective, I think it can get a little too negative, like you said. But no, I definitely agree with you, um, from the fact that we need to be able to have a more positive outlook and do good as much as we possibly can. Because yeah, mistakes do happen. Like after all, we're not perfect. We're human, like you just said. So mistakes happen, but what you do after you make that mistake plays a huge role in sort of helping the soul evolve, if you will. Um, but do you think that before we sort of transition into the latter stages of the podcast, just a couple more questions. Do you think that our subjectivity of what is good and what is bad can make a difference in how we view what is good and what is bad from a spiritual perspective?
Well, originally, in a spiritual perspective,
Mm.
there is no good or bad. Actually, it's all a lesson. Everything is exactly where it needs to be.
Hmm.
It has to be there for you to experience. Like for example, I told you that I have a fight with my mother. It
Hmm.
must be something that I must experience, or even the good things, like they exist to counterbalance each other. Um,
Mm.
so I think there is no right or wrong in the spiritual realms. And if you really want to judge whether it's right or wrong, it's your subjective ideas. And
Mm.
if you and the action of labeling each action subjectively positive or negative will lead you to be too tied up with it,
Mm.
and like judging yourself. It's like judging yourself, and you won't be able to look at it from a distant perspective. So yeah, if you are being subjective, then it means you are still judging yourself on materialistic and physical realm. So, but this is not to say that you shouldn't judge yourself. You should reflect on your experiences.
Hmm.
It's just don't get too deep in there. Don't be so serious about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and this beautifully sort of ties back to where we were talking about what we were talking about earlier about not taking things too seriously. So that's a great way to sort of cap off this section of the podcast. We're going to transition into the segment that I called Bish Bash Bosh, where it's sort of like a word association game. So I give you 5 words, and you have to respond to those words individually with 3 words or 3 different phrases. Um, they can be phrases or they can be words. So, like for example, if I have to say spirituality, what are the 3 words that pop up in your head? That sort of thing. So spirituality is not the word, but yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the first word in the segment of Bish Bash Bosh is differences. What are the 3 things that sort of come to your mind when I say the word differences?
I would say culture,
Hmm.
viewpoints, and arguments.
Hmm. Interesting. What comes to your mind when I say the word nuance?
Sorry,
The word nuance?
like nuances of colors.
Nuance in general. Like what 3 things pop up in your head when I say the word nuance?
I would say light, um,
Hmm.
spectrum,
Hmm.
gray area.
Hmm. Cool. I like the fact that you use the word spectrum there. But yeah, the third word for this segment is learning. What comes to your mind when I say the word learning?
I, I don't know why, but suddenly think of the word seeing,
Hmm.
uh, thinking,
Hmm.
reflecting.
Hmm. Got it. Nice. And the fourth word is empathy. What comes to your mind when I say the word empathy?
Entity,
Empathy. Empathy.
um, empathy. Okay, compassionate,
Hmm.
feel, and I have this image in my head where I would say the word touch, but I would say that I have this image in my head where you're showing empathy to someone and you touch that person.
Hmm. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And the last word for this segment of Bish Bash Bosh is similarities. What comes to your mind when I say the word similarities?
Smile
Hmm.
together
Hmm.
and sitting, like maybe sitting together, smiling.
Nice. That's nice. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful way to close this segment of Bish Bash Bosh. Thank you for responding to those words. We just have 2 more questions before we close off for today. The first one being, how do you relate to people?
How do I relate to people?
Hmm.
Well, I would like to answer this question using the word nuances that you just
Mm.
asked me. Because I feel like, because I'm an introverted person, as I said, I try to stay away from people sometimes because I don't really resonate with them.
Mm.
So in that sense, I would say that I don't have much in common with people. I'm just in a world of myself. But other
Mm.
times when I actually witness life of other people and I see myself in them, I kind of see my nuances there. So it's like a Venn diagram where each
Mm.
person is related to one another um, in the sense of one nuance. And there are various nuances in one person. So that means that you have everything in common with other people. but at the same time, you are completely different from everyone.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And for the last, well, I always call this a question. I don't know when I'll stop calling this a question because it's not really a question, but it's more of a request. Leave us with a positive thought or a positive quote before we close off.
Okay, a positive message to you is to everyone who is listening to this podcast. You have come to a right positive place where you can really express yourself without being judged by other people, without being judged by yourself. Well, just spread the love around, just like how Prateek is doing. And I hope that everyone is on a great, a wonderful mindset around life.
That is beautiful. I appreciate you saying that, and thank you so much for sharing all of your thoughts and your perspectives. I really appreciate you joining me from Vietnam. I mean, we're talking in a 12-hour time difference, which, and I guess that's the beauty of the internet, right? We're able to do that even though we're in different time zones. So thank you for joining me from there. And to those of you who are watching and listening, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for watching this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. Make sure to follow Phuong Anh on her social media accounts and mention in the comment section below some of the things that you found interesting or intriguing or relatable about this episode. Make sure to also check the description box below for other sources of information and content that we've talked about today. Make sure to also like this video, share it around, and subscribe to the channel, and make sure to hit that bell icon to never miss another episode. If you've made it this far, thank you once again for doing so. I really appreciate you being a part of this platoon of perspectives. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and don't forget to keep your mind open to different perspectives, because you never know, random relatability might just be around the corner.